Welcome everyone, Costine here with the discussion about Troy under King Priam in Total War Pharaoh Dynasties, or Daddy Priam as I used to call him in Total War Troy. The Trojans used to be ridiculous in Troy, less so in Pharaoh by the looks of things, but the reason they were so ridiculous is that the city of Troy itself was under the control of a passive faction. Think of Zarnagrunt, for instance. Yeah, where do you think they took that particular idea? Or if you want to think about Nagash's Har, so Nagash's settlement in Warhammer 3. And the crazy thing is, Priam would give you a lot of resources for free when you were playing any of the Trojan factions. So Aeneas, Hector, Paris could get a huge cache of resources. Combine that with their unit roster, they could dominate the game. Also, just the map design in general did favor them significantly in that game. Less so in this one. Hector, Paris, and Aeneas are under the control of Priam. Hector and Paris, of course, are part of the royal family, though obviously Paris starts without Helen. Maybe he should start with Helen. She starts with Menelaus. You can actually gain Helen for diplomacy, though unfortunately there is no option to steal her from Mycenae. Maybe there should be, just, for quote-unquote authenticity. Regardless of that, though, the Trojans still are a very powerful faction in the game. Looking at their unit roster, actually, let's start with the gods. You have Aphrodite, Apollo, and Arena as gods in the nearby area. You start worshipping Apollo. Not necessarily the best god to start worshipping with, but that is what you do have to deal with. In terms of native units, you have Asuan, slingers, warriors, Eastern spearmen, archers, Asuan swordsmen, heavy, medium and light chariots, as well as some more medium chariots actually, and yes, heavy chariots over here, though not necessarily a tier 5 or even tier 6 unit. You do have a good combination of spearmen, archers, slingers available as native units. Pretty solid heavy infantry. This is one of the reasons that Troy used to dominate, because heavy infantry used to dominate in both Troy and Pharaoh until the introduction of lethality, but it's still very, very useful. In terms of unique faction units, you have Trojan Mob. This is something that Aeneas used to have, or Dardanian Mob anyway. Light units, expendable, low lethality. Interesting to have the expendable trait. Tier 2, you do get swordsmen, Trojan slingers as well, and then you start getting into the heavier infantry. So you get Trojan sworn warriors, which are two-handed club infantry, shielded spear warriors, so heavy infantry, low lethality, slow battle speed, but good amount of armor over there, and a good bonus versus large, though lacking armor piercing over there and lethality. You get renowned archers, then you have Trojan swordsmen, exemplary Trojan slingers, heavy Trojan chariots, guards of Troy, really, really heavy infantry, though again, spear and shield, Trojan nobles, which genuinely might be one of the best archer units in the game, if not the best. Like, if we're thinking about anything else, we gotta consider Amon messes, right? Personal archers over here, so you get Tasseti. So Tasseti are still the best, but yeah, they're fairly far away, and keep in mind, Amon mess certainly lacks the enormous strength in terms of his infantry roster that Troy does have. So that's the thing about Troy. Not only do they have good archer, it's probably the second best in the entire freaking game, but they also have really, really good infantry. On top of that, you get, in terms of unique buildings, the Grey Mustering Hall, which gives you happiness, but at the cost of resource production, but it also gives you certain unit recruitment. This is not particularly useful in your core economic provinces, for obvious reasons. This is more so something you can construct on the front line and say a minor settlement if you just want to get some unit recruitment on the front line. You do get the Trojan Monument, which gives you happiness in adjacent provinces, victory points, the Sons of Troy ability in the province, and building gold upkeep -50. And there is a limit of 1 building per faction. So this is kind of like your wonder or unique faction landmark that you can construct over here. You do, interestingly, have the Foreign Relations Office, which gives you 4 diplomatic relations plus 15 gold income and minus free influence in the province. So having an issue with influence is not necessarily going to be a problem in this faction as much as it is for other factions. So you typically would want to have a good amount of influence, but it's not necessarily critical to max it out because you do gain benefits for having foreign influence. So as Prime, your command allows you to gain foreign presence for each foreign influence above 20% in your territories. Activate the command to unlock recruitment of high-tier foreign faction units based on your foreign presence. And if you wait for the passive effect, you'll receive additional gold income per point of foreign presence. And all factions which are at war with you will receive negative effects based on your foreign presence. So that's really useful. You also are invited, basically, to go for the Legacy of Perseus. The Legacy of Perseus is what Hector used to have in Troy, the Total War Troy. In the sense, you're building an alliance and benefiting from that alliance. So I have to say that the benefit that Hector had was actually more significant than what you get with the Legacy of Perseus. Still, it can pay off. And given the factions you have to the north, to the east, to the west even, you will want to do so, because you don't necessarily have a lot of factions you can confederate, and you don't necessarily want to fight everyone. So this is the benefit. And you have natural allies that you can go for. So out of the inner factions, you have Lycia, Sarpedon, who you can really get a good relation with over there. So let me just jump into a campaign and talk about how this really plays out in a campaign situation. So over here with Priam, you will start with 5 heavy infantry units right here. So you'll start with Trojan swordsmen, shield spear warriors, and champions of Troy, as well as a unit of renowned archers, as well as Priam and his bodyguard against an army of 9 units, which is really weird to have that right there. You also start with Hector with his own army aimed at this minor faction, Adrestia, that you can probably wipe out in a couple of turns. If you do start with all of the features unlocked, you also have the ability of going for some special recruitment over here, and it is quite very substantial because you get both the Greek, or rather the Aegean, and the Trojan units over here through all of this. So you get things like Champions of Troy, Yasuan Vanguard, Trojan Princes. These guys are incredible. Like, they will devastate everything. Their range is so high that very few other units can compete with them. It is quite an incredible level of strength. You do start with martial nobility in terms of your unlocked research, which is not necessarily the greatest, but you do you do have some benefits over here that you can get, specifically strength of good governance for management of administration in terms of construction time, which is pretty useful to go for. You don't necessarily have the best initial recruitment of options until you start talking about the Legacy of Perseus over here, or you can get one high tier unit. So if we, get that command sorted out, we just got the Mars Phrase. We just got a heavy freaking chariot unit that we recruit for free. Yeah, that's something, I gotta tell you. That is quite bloody something that you do have access to right there from the very beginning. In terms of gods, you do start, as I said, with Apollo. With shrines, he gives you missile damage on recruitment and +5 happiness. Prayer gives you reload speed and line of sight for the general, and the reload speed for his army. Devoted generals get ammunition and range lethality +3%. So all of this is really solid, and it goes all the way to +6% lethality, 16% reload speed. Damn, that is pretty damn strong. In terms of like the infantry buildings, you do start with infantry housing, which can go all the way in infantry headquarters, which can give you things like guards of Troy, which, yeah, pretty solid, or Trojan swordsmen at tier 2. You start with a bunch of food next to Troy, and if there is any particular downside over here, is that there ain't a lot of gold mines. You know what? One of the benefits, major benefits that Hector had in his campaign is he had a gold mine that was pretty damn quick, close to him. Now, you don't. I mean, you have this gold mine over here, but it's a bit awkward to go for it. But still, you are in a fairly safe, solid enough position to really make this one work in a lot of ways. If we look at some of the economic buildings, it does feel like that Troy is certainly taking a bit from Hati in terms of like lumber, food, and workforce growth over here. Bronze may be an issue, but you do have the islands over here that you can go for, and there's other sources of bronze as well. Lumber to the north, bronze to the west, for instance, that you can go for, or east, even if you want to go for it. So all of that is really good. You also have the Citadel of Troy available, victory points, diplomatic relations, all of that good stuff over here. In terms of the court, you do start with 2 positions because you are the Wanax of the Aegean. So you have flanking maneuver, elite unit, and special recruitment, and then you get more elite unit and special recruitment because, again, you are the Wanax, so that gives you a significant level of benefit. If you're playing Agamemnon, you do need to fight a civil war. If you're playing Priam, you can avoid it if you're playing correctly. You can also just, like, get the fuck out of here, more or less. And then you can give it to some other people. So, you know, if you want to, you do need to give it to someone that that apparently is in IKEA, but yeah, it is hilarious. Anyway. So yeah, just get the hell out of there, Agamemnon. That will really screw him over. So you have a lot of tools at your disposal to screw Agamemnon. I just started the Trojan War over there by pissing off Agamemnon. In terms of the power of the crown, you do start with 2 regalia items, so 1 replenishment, fear, and encourage for bodyguards, and then for the Civic Wanax, deal evaluation except barters, and +5 diplomatic relations. All very good, all very useful. And the game recommends you go for Perseus the hero. So if we go with this Ancient Legacy, I covered the other one in the video on Agamemnon. So you start with 2 global recruitment slots and host games for peace and diplomacy for Danans and Trojans, and then this increases the more you go for it. Also, special recruitment cost reduced by -50% if you increase this more. Now, diplomacy-wise, let's just play around with it so I can show you what this will look like. Keep in mind that the campaign options that I'm currently using do give me some fairly hefty benefits in terms of diplomacy, but all the same, I do have a lot of tools at my disposal to make this work. Achilles may not care much for me, but then again, we can really play this off. So if we just give him and join his war over here, my point here is to ensure that Achilles just joins my little court. Or we can vassalize him. Sure, why not? And then we take a look at that Perseus the hero over here, so you can see how much they're gonna be adding to contribution. So I think it's based on the amount of territory that they do have. So the more territory they have, the more it's gonna value over here, so the more unity you get. So you do need to get over 100+ unity in order to make this work. So you do care about your allies succeeding over here. You can also get these games sorted out. That will certainly give various benefits, various resources that you can take advantage of. And you can also gain, like, you know, some various resources over here. If we take a look at the situation, we can get stone, various things. I don't know if we can get anything else. I mean, it was showing, let's see. Anyway, let's see. So you do have games for diplomacy that you do have access to. Top of that, because you start as a king, you do have various dynasty titles. It does provide some benefits in terms of, you know, prayers and other things that you can certainly use in order to really help you out over there in terms of certain benefits. So you get piety, shrewdness, all that. And then in terms of the dynasty tree, as you can see, Hector, who really could use a different icon, because, like, that is not how Hector looks. Like, if we actually look at Hector, it's like, yeah, he looks like he does in Troy, but his icon, for whatever reason, looks very different. Paris looks like he does in Troy. Aeneas is not here. You don't start with Paris on the field, but you can recruit Paris, Aeneas, Meta, and a couple of others, right? A couple of generals right there. And it does seem that they've, you know, it's nice that they've added general traits again into it, because I don't think that was available at the start over there. So you got a ruling family over here, and then you have your dynasty tree. And it is useful to adopt certain people as part of the dynasty. Like, hey, Achilles, you want to join my dynasty? Sure, why not, right? Just saying. It is something that does work over there, and it can give you certain benefits. So if you want Achilles, for whatever reason, to become the 1x, yeah, you can do so. And that would be Priam. Good unit roster, good starting position. Bit weird with the enemy over here, whereas really the main fight that you will have is the one over here with Hector. But outside of that, it is a fairly strong starting position. Although you will probably have to go some distance for certain resources, at least initially. But once you get the ball rolling, it will not stop rolling, really. That's all I had to say. Costin here, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications. Stay tuned for more. And yeah, you can either burn my city to the ground or take it over, because there is, of course, the Aspis of Ares available over here. Royal powers, you know, I'll work on that, but honestly, like, my experience with legitimacy is by the time you actually can use those powers, the campaign is kind of won. Though that's in the baseline game. We'll see with this bigger map how that plays out. Stay tuned for more.